This is basically kind of a prequel or a prequel to
Prequel, is that
anyone
like you take it during the
when
morning?
you're sick. Yeah. Yeah, prequel. Pre- Prequel's the best.
Give me what I'm looking for.
This is AnimeShin. Are you ready?
Before we move on to likes, I'm going to give a couple shout outs to two of my favorite Stuck in an Alternate World movies
All right, that's cool.
and
Yeah.
books. One's a book by Michael End. It's called The NeverEnding Story. You can see I have
Oh yeah.
the record of it. The record right
There
here.
you
And the
go.
other one,
Yeah.
Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Also,
Yes.
a young woman is stuck in a secondary world. And those are both incredible.
I feel like anyone who would ever listen to this, because we're us, I'm me, I would be like, well, of course, everyone's going to know those, but I feel like we're old.
Yeah, you don't, yeah, that's a true statement.
There's a lot of people who wouldn't know Labyrinth or NeverEnding Story,
Right.
but I would add on to that, and I'm going to just say the movies because I haven't read any book versions of either, but amazing movies that if you like anime, you will love both of those movies no matter what.
And we can throw the Dark Crystal in there, which I have up at the top.
Yeah.
That you can throw the
Yeah.
Dark Crystal. These are LPs, like little literal records. The Neverending Story is the only one actually from the '80s with the song from Lamal. That's super good. And then the if you don't, even if you don't like the movie Labyrinth, you should pick up the soundtrack because like it's the score and then
Dance, magic dance.
it's a bunch of David Bowie
Yeah.
songs, and you have to like David
Yeah.
Bowie. Dark Crystal is completely second world. There's no people going from one world to another. And actually this is a complete tangent. Now we're in tangent territory, but the Netflix Dark Crystal series is actually very, very good. The funny thing, a little trivia, is that started out as a sequel to Labyrinth.
Oh, okay.
The showrunner set down to make a sequel to Labyrinth, and he was having trouble doing it. And then he's like, well, what if we did Dark Crystal? And they did all the same stuff, puppets, very little CGI. There was no CGI, obviously, in the original Dark Crystal. My finger keeps floating away from it, and this it like has no concept of
No one's going to be able to see it anyway.
Fair
So
enough.
if
Yeah.
it's video, I'm going to have to add stuff because I can see what
I
you're
know
pointing at.
I
I'm
could
like,
just
I
point
see a
right
square.
here, and you could just put something
Yeah.
there so that I don't look
Yeah, it's
foolish.
like, see this right here?
And it's just moving around.
I'm going to go on a limb.
Mm-hmm.
So Labyrinth would be my top of all of those. Then I would say NeverEnding Story would be next. Then I would say, and here's where it's going to get weird, Legend with Tom Cruise, to me, is better than Dark Crystal.
Oof. I like Legend, but that is very controversial. That's super controversial.
Yeah.
No way do I think it's better than Dark Crystal, but we'll stick on this tangent of these old 80s shows, and they were so good, and they're dark. I have kids now, and I think about how old are they going to be when I introduce them to these, because NeverEnding Story in particular has two very dark moments that I think a lot of people our age still think about. Is
Gamork.
Well, Gamork is scary, the wolf creature.
Gamork is what stuck in my nightmares. Yeah, when I was a kid, because I saw it super young. I'm sure you did too.
Then come at me, Gamork. Yeah, I saw it in theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the rock biter, when the Nothing comes and rips his friends away, and the rock biter, for those of you who don't know, is basically a living mountain. And so he's giant, and his friends are, if we have a video of this, like small, like this elf toy that I have in my hand. But he can basically hold his friends in his hand, and he tried to hold them out of the Nothing, which is this big force that's tearing up Fantasia, the land that they live in. And he looks at his hands and he says, they look like such good, strong hands. And he's just lamenting the fact that his friends were ripped from his hands and killed.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very dark.
Then Artax, the horse, dies in the swamp of sorrow because he becomes so sad he just drowns in the swamp. It's so dark, but it's so good. And
Well, and Atreyu's pulling on the horse's
come on, Artax.
bridle, and
Artax, no!
it's a real horse, and the real horse
Yeah.
is just getting its face yanked, and yeah, it was intense.
Yeah, it's so good. And I also would argue, since we're just on a tangent here, the NeverEnding Story is one of the best adaptations from a book of all time. And now, if you're not familiar with the movie, it's like Sword Art Online, bringing it back around. A boy is running from bullies and he hides in a used bookstore. And there is a old man there reading this book. And he tells him the story changes every time you read it. But he says, like, you're too young for it. And then he gets a phone call and goes in the other room. So, of course, Bastion, our hero, grabs it and runs off with it. And then goes and hides in his school's attic and starts reading it. And as he reads it, they start interacting with him.
It's very breaking the fourth wall in that way, yeah.
Yeah, it's very meta. It's on the outside. The book does a very similar thing, but you are reading the book and the character is then reading a book and they reference you reading the book in the book.
Oh, that's cool.
And so there's like a third layer. It's a very good book. It's translated from German. Michael Ende is the guy's name who wrote it. But the movie itself is only the first half of the book, which is a brilliant decision because it ends in a very good place where the arc of the character, the first arc, ends. No pun intended, because Michael. And then you don't need to continue to go on, whereas so many movies try to fit an entire 300 to 500 page book into a 2-hour movie, and that just doesn't work.
So is the rest of the book what NeverEnding Story sequel is on?
Sort of. So it's similar in terms of NeverEnding Story 2, which is not nearly as good as the first one.
Mm-mm.
It
I don't
is.
even remember it.
The Fantasia characters come to our world.
Oh, dumb.
Yeah, and that is the second half of the book. Bastion builds like an army and starts to kind of get power hungry from the wishes and stuff. So it's similar in terms of some of the beats are the same of the Fantasia characters coming into our world. To be honest, I haven't seen the second one in 25 years or whenever it came out. But I've seen this one a couple weeks ago. I watch it all the time. And all three of those movies, when the fire tribe is taking their heads off in Labyrinth and passing it around and stuff.
That part's super dark too. Yeah, of that movie.
Yeah, it is dark.
That part was the part that was nightmare fuel when I was a kid in Labyrinth, and then the part where there was the witch that comes up out of the swamp in Legend.
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise is like, do you plan to eat me, ma'am? And he sounds so like weak, and she's like, indeed I do. Oh, indeed I do. And like her nails are like on his shield.
Jack. They call me Jack, ma'am.
Yeah, it's they're good. All of them, super good.
They're good, and they're all practical effects. And so I'm not going to go on a tangent about CGI, but quickly, the reason CGI is not as scary as practical effects is because when you know something doesn't exist. So I know, for example, Ludo doesn't exist from Labyrinth, he's actually a friendly monster, so it's not the greatest example, but I know that monster doesn't exist. And if he also doesn't exist because he's CGI, it's like 2 steps you have to go instead of just, I'm looking at this one thing. That Gamork is a better example from the NeverEnding Story. Is like, I know, well, werewolves might exist, but I know this wolf creature doesn't exist. If he's just CGI, then I know he doesn't exist and he doesn't exist. But the puppet is so freaky.
Oh yeah.
That he lives in many of 40-something's nightmares, even still.
Yeah, that's sweet. I wish they would do more like that. And I would follow Jim Henson, the Jim Henson Company, for just years and years and years, waiting for them to make more of that. And what's crazy is every one of those has had to have just made crazy money. So I don't know why there's not more.
Maybe, I mean, it's hard to say because I think Labyrinth was considered a bomb in the box office, but they become like cult classics.
Right.
I even liked Jim Henson did a show called Bear in the Big Blue House. That was like just a kid show that was very good, had sweet puppets in it. Jim Henson's
Jim Henson, the storyteller.
Yeah,
Yep,
very, very
yep.
good.
I knew you were gonna go there. I had to jump in there
Yeah.
first.
You're like, I know this one too.
Yeah, very, very good.
It's so good.
I see, said the blind man.
And then there was a movie where they started getting into CGI a little bit, and I can't remember
Is
what
it the
was
mirror
called.
mask?
Yeah, that one.
Which is okay. It's a Neil Gaiman story. So, and he's generally good. He's a good writer. His novels are better than his short stories, in my opinion, but he's a very good, very
is fine.
poetic prose.
I liked the Amazon show based on his book,
American
Omens.
Gods. Oh, Good Omens. Good Omens was him and Terry Pratchett wrote that together. Both good writers.
Yeah, I like that one. I like that show a lot.
It's a very good book.
American Gods first season, very good. Fell off a fucking cliff, and I'll have to bleep that.
Oh, did I never saw anything but the first season.
It fell off a cliff hard. Shadow is a tough character. Like, he's a tough protagonist. Like, he's a tough guy.
Yeah.
He talks about in the book endlessly how big of a person he is and how imposing. And he turns into the biggest weenie in season 2. It's insane.
I gotta be honest with you. American Gods is my least favorite Neil Gaiman book. Gaiman. I don't know how people say it, but it is my least favorite. I know it's his most popular, but
Oh, I thought Good Omens was.
even the sequel, Anastasi Boys, is better to me. Well, Good Omens, like I said, is like him and Terry Pratchett wrote it together, so it's hard to like give credit to one or the other.
Yeah, that's fair.
This shows you why we both gave it a 2. This is what happens when we both give it a 2, and most of the movie is boring. Because now we've talked for 20 some minutes or something on
Much more excitedly about other things. Yeah.
much better. Yeah, much more entertaining.
I do have some good stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely some good stuff, especially the last like half an hour.